Welcome to this deep dive. We're exploring 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 21 through 25 today. It's a passage just, well, packed with guidance. And you're likely here because, you want to really get to the heart of these verses, understand them deeply, but maybe without feeling overwhelmed. That's our goal, too.
Definitely. And we pulled together quite a range of sources, different commentaries, theological views, and, of course, the biblical text itself. We want to sort of sift through it all, find the key insights.
Right. So our mission, if you like, is to unpack the big ideas here. Suffering, Christ's example, atonement, spiritual guidance, all of that.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Verse 21 of 1 Peter 2.
Right, verse 21, it starts. For you have been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example for you to follow in his steps. So the main thing here is this idea that for Christians, enduring hardship, it's not really a surprise. It's actually part of the path.
And that word called it feels pretty significant, doesn't it? Like It's not just a suggestion.
Exactly. Called points to our actual Christian identity, our vocation.
Yeah.
It's just inherent in following Christ that we should expect trials. Like Acts 14.22 says, we enter the kingdom through many tribulations.
Okay. So when Peter writes, Christ suffered for you, and I think some manuscripts say for us, right? How does that set the pattern?
Yeah, whether it's you or us, the point is Christ's suffering is the ultimate model for how to patiently handle undeserved suffering. He was perfect, sinless, yet he suffered. That's the standard.
And leaving you an example, that Greek word upormum. What's the nuance there? It sounds quite specific.
It really is. Upormum was literally like a writing copy, maybe for a child learning letters, something you trace over.
Okay, like a template.
Exactly. So the insight is following Christ isn't vague. It's about carefully tracing this pattern he laid down, especially in how we face suffering. It's a model for imitation.
A clear blueprint then, and follow his steps. Ipokote, what does that add?
That word ipokastete, it implies following really closely, like right in his footsteps. It's about a tight imitation of his patience and his innocence, particularly when facing hardship.
Okay, that paints a clear picture of what's expected. Then verse 22, it shifts focus a bit, doesn't it? It grounds this example in who Christ is.
Yes, verse 22 is crucial. He committed no sin and no deceit was found in his mouth. This isn't just a side note, it's the foundation. It's why he can be both our perfect example and our sacrifice.
And this idea, his sinlessness, it has roots in the Old Testament, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is a direct quote pretty much from Isaiah 53, verse 9. The prophecy about the suffering servant who had done no violence, no deceit. That Old Testament link is vital.
So why is it so important? Why emphasize his sinlessness right here when talking about his suffering as an example?
Well, because he was sinless. His suffering wasn't deserved. It wasn't punishment for his own mistakes. He suffered unjustly for us. That's what makes him the unique, perfect sacrifice and the ultimate example of handling unjust suffering. Without the sinlessness, the whole picture changes.
That makes sense. That distinction is critical. Okay, let's move to verse 23 then, which looks at how Christ reacted while suffering.
Right. Verse 23. When they heaped abuse on him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges justly. The key takeaway here is his refusal to hit back. No tit for tat.
Heaped abuse, that's strong language. What kind of things are we talking about?
Well, the Gospels show it clearly. He was called a Samaritan, which was an insult then, accused of being a glutton, a drunkard. People said he had a demon or worked for Satan even, accused of misleading people.
Wow, serious stuff. And yet he did not retaliate. That's hard to imagine, honestly. Very counterintuitive.
It is. False accusations, insults, but no verbal retaliation. And then the physical suffering, the beatings. Crucifixion, he made no threats. No calling down fire from heaven, none of that.
Instead, it says he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. The Greek word is pardidu. What does that tell us?
Cardidu, yeah. It means he handed over, committed, surrendered his whole cause, his very self, to God, the one judge who is truly just. Instead of seeking his own vindication or revenge, he placed complete trust in God's justice. It reminds you of Luke 23.46 on the cross. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And it fits with Romans 12 or 5:1-9, don't take revenge, leave it to God.
So total trust in God's fairness, even in the worst possible situation. That's powerful in itself. Okay, now verse 24. This feels like the absolute core of the passage, maybe even the gospel message itself. Christ bearing our sins. Let's unpack this one carefully.
Yeah, verse 24 is huge. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, so that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. For by his stripes you are healed. So much here. But the central idea, Christ's suffering wasn't just an example, it was substitutionary. He took our place.
The word for bore, adagon, I understand there's some depth to that word.
There is. Enike has this dual sense. It means to carry or take up, like carrying a heavy load, our sins perhaps hinting at carrying the cross itself. But it also has a strong sacrificial meaning, to offer up, like offering a sacrifice. We see that usage in Hebrews and James.
So he both carried the burden and offered himself.
Exactly. It beautifully captures both aspects. And this, again, connects straight back to Isaiah 53 with words like sabel and nasa in Hebrew, both meaning to bear or carry. The Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, even uses inigain sometimes for bearing sin's consequences. So Peter's clearly saying our sins were laid on Christ.
But just to be clear, when it says he bore our sins, it doesn't mean Christ actually became sinful, right?
Correct. That's a crucial distinction. It means he bore the guilt, the penalty, the consequences of our sins. Like 2 Corinthians 5.21 says, God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us. He took the legal status, the punishment, without inheriting the moral character of sin.
Okay. And in his body on the tree, that emphasizes the physical reality.
Absolutely. This wasn't abstract. It was real physical suffering on the cross. And using the word tree, oxalon was common for the cross. It links back to Deuteronomy 21 about someone hanged on a tree being under God's curse, so it carries that weight of shame and judgment.
Wow. Okay, and the purpose of all this? So that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. What does that mean practically?
It means his sacrifice achieves a radical transformation in us. Dying to sin means breaking free from sin's power. Its control over us. It's a fundamental shift. And living to righteousness is the positive side, embracing a new life of holiness, aligned with God's will. Think Romans 6, where Paul talks about being united with Christ's death and resurrection, leading to new life.
Right, that whole dying and rising with Christ theme. And then the last part of verse 24, by his stripes you are healed. We see such a visceral image.
It really is. Dusig refers to a single welt or bruise from a blow, often from scourging. The singular might even emphasize the totality of his suffering and this healing it brings. It's primarily spiritual. It's healing for the deep wounds, the diseases of the soul caused by sin. It's this amazing paradox. His wounds bring our wholeness.
Incredible. So his suffering is exemplary, substitutionary, and restorative. It achieves our redemption and enables this new life. That's a lot. Okay, let's look at the final verse 25. It feels like a conclusion, bringing comfort.
Yes, verse 25 wraps it up beautifully. For you were continually straying like sheep, but now you have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. That opening image, straying like sheep, echoes Isaiah 53.6 again. All we like sheep have gone astray. It paints that picture of being lost, vulnerable, without direction.
Just wandering aimlessly, maybe dangerously.
Exactly. That was our condition apart from Christ, lost in sin. But then the shift. But now you have returned. That verb, depesite, implies an active turning, a conscious choice, a conversion, not just drifting back, but turning back.
And who has we returned to? The shepherd and overseer of your souls. Those titles are rich with meaning.
They really are. Shepherd immediately brings to mind care, guidance, protection. Think Psalm 23, John 10, I am the good shepherd. An overseer, peskopas, where we get the word bishop, implies careful watchfulness, superintendence, taking responsibility for our spiritual well-being. It's a role church leaders have, but ultimately it reflects Christ's supreme care.
So Christ isn't just a historical figure. He's actively shepherding us, watching over us now.
Precisely.
And the fact that he's the shepherd and overseer of your souls, that feels very personal, very intimate.
It does. It emphasizes the deep, internal, spiritual nature of his care. Peter's reminding them and us of the amazing journey from being lost sheep to being safely back in the care of the ultimate shepherd.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into just these 5 verses, 1 Peter 2.21-25, has been really illuminating. If we were to sort of boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways?
Well, I think first, Christ's suffering is the ultimate example of patient endurance, especially when it's unjust, and that's grounded in his sinlessness.
Yeah.
Second, and crucially, his suffering wasn't just an example. It was substitutionary. He bore our sins on the cross. Third, because of that sacrifice, we have this incredible opportunity to die to sin and start living this new life of righteousness, experiencing spiritual healing. And finally, the comfort of knowing we've returned. We've come back to Christ, who is our ongoing shepherd and overseer, constantly caring for our souls.
It really is amazing how interconnected and profound these verses are. Hopefully for you listening, this has brought some clarity and maybe some aha moments too.
Yeah, and perhaps a final thought to mull over. Knowing the depth of Christ's suffering for you and seeing him as your active shepherd and overseer right now, how does that actually change how you face challenges? How does it shape your own spiritual walk day to day? Really thinking about the personal impact of these truths. That can be transformative.